Week 6 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I'd have add off the wire this week. The first one, the Green Bay Packers. After the bye week, the Packers now they're out there in 57% of fantasy leagues. I know they gave up a big ball game to the Dallas Cowboys in week 4, but a great matchup week 6 with the Cincinnati Bengals coming in. So the first 4 games of the year for Green Bay. Week 1 versus Detroit, 13 points allowed, 4 sacks and interception. Week 2 versus the Commanders, 18 points allowed, 4 sacks. Week 3 at Cleveland, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks and interception. And then week 4 at Dallas, like I said, it was a horrible game for them, 38 points allowed and a sack. But now getting the bye week versus a Cincinnati team that gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. I think the Green Bay Packers could go out there and bounce back and well-rested, like I said, as well, versus obviously a Cincinnati offense that's turning the football over, and Jake Browning has been taking big hits. The next DSTs, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts were a great streaming option in week 5 where they had a great game versus the Vegas Raiders. And they've been a solid unit for the majority of the season. 3 out of 5 games, double-digit fantasy points. Week 3 at Tennessee, 20 points allowed, 4 sacks, a pick 6, a block kick. Week 4 at the Rams, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. In week 5 versus Vegas, like I said, the big game, 6 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a block kick. So week 6, another good matchup versus Arizona. I know Arizona has some players, obviously, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, but Kyler Murray, he's been a middle-of-the-pack quarterback for the most part this season, and obviously they're banged up in the backfield where it's down to Michael Carter and Amari DiMercato, guys who obviously were 3rd and 4th on the depth chart, where Carter wasn't even on the regular roster and on the practice squad. So Indianapolis, they get to the quarterback, they create some turnovers, and at home they've been a better defense than they've been on the road. So with a home game once again in week 6, I like them as an ad this week, and they're out there in 52% of fantasy leagues. The next DST is the New England Patriots. So the Patriots with a big upset victory at division rival, the Buffalo Bills. And I thought their defense played well. In terms of fantasy football, they didn't put up a lot of points, but they made Josh Allen work for it, and they won the ball game. So New England, the last few games for them, week 3 versus the Steelers, 21 points allowed, an interception. Week 4 versus the Panthers, 13 points allowed, a sack, a return touchdown. And week 5 at Buffalo, like I said, they gave up the 20 points, but they made them earn it and got the victory in Buffalo. 20 points allowed, a sack, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries. So they're going to be a hot waiver wire pickup, obviously, this New England Patriot team. And it's a slam dunk matchup at the New Orleans Saints. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. Then week 7, a great matchup at the Tennessee Titans. They give up the most fantasy points to DSTs. And then week 8 versus Cleveland, the 2nd most. So it's great matchups coming up. And this is a long road trip for them. 3 games in a row, including the week 5 game on the road. But New England definitely looks like they're a real deal, beating Buffalo and Buffalo. And this defense, they make you earn it. So with great matchups coming up and coming off a solid ball game at the Buffalo Bills, New England definitely a DST to add this week, and they're available in tons of fantasy leagues right now. In 84%, the next DSTs, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, their defense has been a decent unit so far in the early going this season, available in 88% of fantasy leagues. And they went into Los Angeles and had a big ball game, was this DST. This season, they played pretty solid for the most part as this Commanders. Week 3 versus the Vegas Raiders, 24 points allowed, 5 sacks, a return touchdown. Week 4 at Atlanta, 34 points allowed in that one, a sack and interception. And week 5 at the Chargers, 10 points allowed, 5 sacks and interception, and a fumble recovery. So like I said, Washington, they could get to the quarterback. We know head coach Dan Quinn's a defensive-minded head coach, obviously, where he was a great coordinator with the Legion of Boom years ago in Seattle. He turned that Cowboy defense around where he was the coordinator there. And now you see how bad it's been the last 2 seasons. And now he's brought it here as the head coach with the Washington Commanders. So this week with a great matchup versus the Chicago Bears, a struggling offense for the most part this season. And on Monday night, I think Washington could go out there and be a decent streaming option this week. In the final DST, I would add off the wire, and it's definitely a streaming option, is the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, their defense isn't any good, is this Las Vegas Raider team. But like I said, there's a 1-week streaming option with a great matchup versus Tennessee Titans in week 6. That give up the most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. I think Vegas could go out there and help fantasy owners. The last few weeks for them, week 3 at the Commanders, doors blown off, no doubt. 41 points allowed, a sack, a fumble recovery. Week 4 versus the Bears, 25 points allowed, a sack and an into. In week 5 at Indianapolis, 40 points allowed in that one. So like I said, they've been a horrible defense all season long. I know Crosby, which is in the league, but like I said, they're not getting the job done, but Tennessee is coming into Vegas and they give up the most points to DSTs, and that's why they made the list. Sets a few defense DST units I looked at off the wire for week 6 of the fantasy football season.